over 2 million people fought in the Battle of D-Day. This is important because it showed how many people actually fought in the battle, and the 2 million people was just for one side. D-Day was the most important battle in World War II, which includes the battle itself, the strategies used, and how the battle impacted the rest of the war. I chose this topic today because I've always been fascinated with World War II, and more specifically, D-Day itself. I've also done research on this topic that I'm talking about today. First, I'll talk about the battle itself. That will be followed by some of the strategies of the war, and then finally I'll talk about some of the facts about the battle and how they pertain to the war and why they're so important to understand. First, let me begin with the battle itself. According to American History 2014 D-Day, the battle took place on June 6, 1944. This is important to understand because it shows that it was towards the end of the war, but it was not the end of the war. In fact, it was one of the major turning points of the war. The general background knowledge on D-Day itself was Hitler's regime in Germany took over France towards the beginning of the war, and they kept control up until this point. The Allied forces, which was mostly Canadian, British, and American troops, wanted to push back Germany outside of France and push them more back to the original border. This battle was very deadly. There was many casualties for both sides. In fact, there were so many casualties that they couldn't even get a rough estimate and count until after 4 days after the battle was over. The end result of the Battle of D-Day was that the Allied forces won and defeated Germany and pushed them much farther back and closer to their original border. Next, let's talk about some of the simple strategies about D-Day. The main strategy was what they called Operation Overload, which it did exactly what it sounds like. They overloaded Germany with so many troops and so much force that they literally pushed them back just by pure force. According to Craig L. Simmons, chairman of History Department at the United States Naval Academy, 2016 Normandy's crucial component, a major impact on this fighting was the use of the Navy. This was very important because the Navy brought in troops to the beaches so they can actually fight on land, and they also conducted many small Navy battles outside the coast of France. Another strategy that was very key in this was the dropping of paratroopers the night before the actual battle itself. This was important because we got men behind the lines of Germany, and so we could scope things out before the actual battle itself took place. This was successful and unsuccessful in many ways. Successful because we did get men back there behind enemy lines, but many soldiers, since it was at night, they could not hit their target because it was hard to see. So many soldiers were captured and even killed by German forces. Another key aspect used during the battle was the use of planes, not just the paratrooping, but we dropped many bombs that drove them back and ruined a lot of their lines. The German lines were very strong, and even though we had 2 million people, they stood their ground for longer than most people expected. The key part of this Operation Overload, other than just overloading it, was that it was a surprise, and Germany was not expecting it at all. Next, it talks about some facts about D-Day and why they're so important. According to Jessica Teralico, author for Imperial Wars Museum 2016, the 10 things you need to know about D-Day. This was an international battle. In fact, although many of the main troops were just American, Canadian, and British troops, there was 12 different countries that fought for the Allied powers during this battle. This is important because it shows how important it was for World War II, and how it was truly a world war and not just a European war, because even Australia was even in it, and they're not even close to Europe, so it really shows that. D-Day was the largest land, naval, and air battle of all time. Every other battle, this has the most people fought and killed in it, and the most uses of technology and everything else. The war did not end The war did not end with this, but it was a major turning point. So the Allied forces would not have taken over France, then Germany would have probably ended up winning the war. Because if they would have defeated the Allied powers on this day, Allied powers would have had no morale because they were pretty slim at the time of the battle, and that would have just wiped them out, and Germany probably would have won, and that would have put a significant impact on how the world is today. I've told you about the importance of D-Day. First, I told you about the battle itself and some strategies, and then I explained some facts and why they're so important. In conclusion, the most important day of all of World War II was June 6, 1944, also known as D-Day. This war is very significant because it had over 2 million people fight for just one side of the battle. Thank you.
Less than 15 seconds. Yeah.
Um,
Or seconds.